This is not the Japan you have seen in travel videos. There are no crowds here, no neon signs, no bullet trains threading between glass towers at 250 kilometers per hour. There is no line outside a restaurant and no notification sound from anyone's phone. There is rain on a roof. There is mist in the trees. There is a wooden house on a hillside that has been waiting for years, in the particular way that anything Japanese waits, for someone to come back to it, someone to live in it, someone to nurture it. And there is a government that will pay you in real money to be that person. Japan is not a country that makes headlines for generosity toward outsiders. It is not known for its open immigration policy or its eagerness to invite the world in. And yet now, in a methodical way, Japan has built one of the most financially generous, most comprehensive relocation incentive systems anywhere on Earth. And most of the world has no idea it exists. This video is going to change that. It is imperative to note that Japan's immigration landscape changed significantly in 2024 and 2025, and content published before those updates, including many widely shared blog posts and YouTube videos, describes a system that no longer exists in its previous form. It's very common for incentive systems to change, so always verify current requirements directly with the Japanese embassy or consulate in your home country and cross-reference with Japan's Immigration Services Agency website before making any decisions based on second-hand sources. The rules are not opaque, but they have changed, and they matter. Before we go any further, there is something we weave through our relocation videos. At key moments, when the research reveals something that most people get wrong, or when the process has a hidden step that can make or break your outcome, or when there is a piece of insider knowledge that separates the people who thrive in a move like this from the people who struggle. This video will stop and deliver what we call an insider's tip for relocation success. These are not general travel advice. They are specific, actionable insights that come from personal experience and deep research. These are the type of solid, lived experience facts that the social media and clickbait headline articles never tell you. Most importantly, they are what you need to know before any serious move is made. Watch for them. Write them down. They are powerful, practical, and valuable moments that will dramatically improve your relocation experience. We've also compiled the actionable information from this documentary into a printable Akiya planner, so you can use it to explore whether this is the right move for you. You can find that in the link in the description below. Why Japan? Why now? To understand what Japan is offering you, you need to understand what Japan is facing. Japan lost 908,574 people in 2024 alone, not to emigration, not to disaster, lost to the simple arithmetic of more deaths than births, compounding year after year with no reversal in sight. It was the largest single-year population decline ever recorded in Japan's history, and it was not an anomaly. It was the 16th consecutive year of population decline. Japan's total population, which peaked at 126.6 million in 2009, is now approximately 120 million and falling. Nearly 1 in 3 Japanese citizens is aged 65 or older. In 2023, Japan recorded only 759,000 births against 1.6 million deaths. The gap is not closing. By the most conservative projections, Japan's population will fall below 100 million by the 2050s and below 80 million before the end of this century. In rural Japan, these numbers are not projections. They are already the present tense. Drive through the Chugoku region or through inland Shikoku, the smallest of Japan's 4 main islands, rarely visited even by the Japanese themselves, and you will see it. Shuttered storefronts line main streets that once served thriving communities. Schools were closed when the last children grew up and left. Rice terraces going unmaintained for the first time in 4 centuries because there is no one left to tend them. Villages where the average age of the remaining residents is in the mid-70s, and where the neighborhood association, the jichikai, the bedrock of Japanese rural social organization, can barely find enough able-bodied members to fulfill its seasonal duties. International demographers have given Japan a designation that it earned before any other nation on Earth, the depopulation vanguard country. Japan is not anticipating what every other aging nation fears. Japan has already arrived there. It is sending back reports from the future that South Korea, China, Germany, Italy, and dozens of other countries are going to be reading with shocked recognition within a generation. And Japan, characteristically, has responded to this crisis not with drama, but with creative policy. Deliberate, funded, precisely structured policy, built specifically to attract the people it needs to places it needs them. That policy is why you are watching this video. Here's an insider's tip for relocation success. Japan's rural depopulation is most acute in specific prefectures: Akita, Shimane, Kochi, Tokushima, and parts of Hokkaido and Shikoku see the steepest declines. These are also, not coincidentally, the prefectures where the grant programs are most generous, the available properties are most accessible, and the welcome for incoming residents, foreign or domestic, is most tangible. The places with the most need are the places creating the most opportunity. Keep that correlation in mind as you research specific locations. Before we go any further, there is a question worth addressing directly. Because if you are watching this video with serious intent, your mind has already asked it. If rural Japan is so beautiful, why is everyone leaving? The answer is not what you assume. The people leaving rural Japan are not leaving because the landscape is wrong for them. They are not leaving because the food is poor, the community is hostile, or the quality of life is inferior. They are leaving because of a structural mismatch between what a modern knowledge economy career requires and what a rural Japanese prefecture of 2026 can provide to a 23-year-old trying to build one. Japan's best universities are in Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, and a handful of other major cities. The moment a talented young person in Akita Prefecture decides to pursue a serious career in technology, finance, medicine, or design, they move because the professional infrastructure they need doesn't exist where they grew up. And once in the city, the gravitational pull of urban Japan, the career networks, the cultural amenities, the excellent and diverse cuisine, the social possibilities, keeps them there. There is also a well-documented gender dimension. Young women are leaving rural areas at nearly double the rate of young men, because rural Japan still operates on social norms that constrain female careers and ambitions in ways that urban Japan does not. None of that has anything to do with you. The structural obstacle that pushes a 23-year-old Japanese engineer out of rural Shimane is entirely irrelevant to a 45-year-old Canadian entrepreneur, a 58-year-old American retiree, or a 35-year-old British remote worker who already has their career infrastructure. They are not moving to find opportunity. They are moving with it. They bring income that exists independent of the local economy. And that is precisely the profile that Japan's rural revitalization programs were designed to attract. The people who left took their labor with them. They could not take the mountains. They could not take the rice terraces. They could not take the particular quality of autumn light through cedar trees or the weight of the silence on a winter morning when the snow sits 3 feet deep and the whole world outside goes soft and white and still. That is still here, and Japan is paying you to come find it. Here's an insider's tip for relocation success. The communities that welcome foreign residents most actively in rural Japan are not simply tolerating outsiders out of necessity. Many have developed formal international affairs departments and English language onboarding support specifically for incoming foreign residents. The town of Kamiyama in Tokushima Prefecture, for example, has become internationally recognized as a model of rural revitalization through attracting creative professionals and remote workers from outside the region. Research not just the prefecture, but the specific municipality. The attitude of the local government toward new residents varies enormously, and it matters for your daily experience in ways that no grant amount can fully compensate for. Here's where this video diverges from everything else you have read or watched about Japan's Akiya program. Most coverage of this topic leads with the free houses and stops there. The house is the story. The house is the hook, and the house is real. We will get to it. But the house is not the most financially significant part of what Japan is offering. The overall offer is so much more than just a house. To understand what Japan is actually offering, you need to think in layers, because the programs coordinate, and the program synergy is where the real number lives. Level 1. The National Relocation Subsidy. Japan's Cabinet Office runs a program formally called the Regional Revitalization Migration Support Grant. The core offer is structured as follows: up to 1 million yen for an individual relocating from the Greater Tokyo area, and up to 3 million yen for a household, calculated as 1 million yen base plus 1 million yen for each additional family member, including children. At current exchange rates, 3 million yen represents approximately $20,000 for a family of 3. This is a cash payment, real money transferred to you, in exchange for your commitment to establish legal residency in a designated participating municipality and remain there for at least 5 years. Leave before 5 years, and the subsidy must be repaid in full. Stay, and it is yours. As of 2025, over 1,300 municipalities across all 46 prefectures outside central Tokyo are enrolled in this program. The geographic range spans from Hokkaido in the far north to Kyushu in the south, to the islands of Okinawa and the Seto Inland Sea. Level 2. The Renovation Subsidies. Japan has a housing vacancy problem of historic proportions. There are approximately 9 million vacant homes across Japan called Akiya, representing roughly 14% of the country's total housing stock. The government's response is a renovation subsidy framework that varies by municipality, but follows a consistent general structure. Grants covering 50% of renovation costs, capped at between 1 million yen and 5 million yen, depending on the specific municipality and the scope of work. In practical terms, this means that a renovation project costing 4 million yen, approximately $27,000, may be subsidized to the tune of 2 million yen or more, depending on where you are and what programs your specific municipality offers. Level 3. The Seismic and Energy Grants. Japan is an earthquake-prone country. Older rural properties, particularly those built before 1981, when Japan's modern seismic building standards were introduced, often require seismic retrofit work to meet current codes. The government subsidizes this too. Seismic retrofit grants typically range from 1 million yen to 3 million yen, depending on the prefecture and the scope of the structural work required. Additionally, energy efficiency grants for insulation upgrades, heating system improvements, and solar panel installation add a further 500,000 yen to 2 million yen to the available support package. Add these layers together: relocation grant, renovation subsidy, seismic retrofit, energy efficiency, and a family doing a full renovation of a rural Akiya property in a participating municipality can realistically access between 7 million yen and 10 million yen in combined government support. That is approximately 47,000 to 67,000 US dollars in grants for a property that may have cost you 2 million to 6 million yen to purchase. That is 13,000 to 40,000 US dollars for a livable rural home before renovation. Read those numbers together. You may be acquiring a home fully renovated for a net cost that is lower than the annual rent on a modest apartment in Toronto, Sydney, or London, in a country with world-class universal healthcare, one of the lowest crime rates on the planet, and 4 seasons of extraordinary natural beauty delivered to your doorstep all year without charge. Here's an insider's tip for relocation success. The grant programs described here are primarily designed for people relocating from the Greater Tokyo area, specifically from Tokyo and its surrounding prefectures of Kanagawa, Saitama, and Chiba. Foreign nationals can also qualify for these programs, but the primary legal channel is through establishing residency, which requires a qualifying visa. The digital nomad visa introduced in 2024 allows a 6-month stay, non-extendable, for remote workers earning approximately 10 million yen annually, approximately 65,000 US dollars, giving you a meaningful test period before committing to the longer-term residency path. Use it wisely. The Akiya. The vacant home is where the imagination tends to go first when people encounter Japan's rural incentive story, and for good reason. The concept of a house in Japan for a fraction of what equivalent property costs anywhere in the developed world carries a particular kind of appeal that photographs well and travels fast on social media. The reality deserves both the romance and stark candor. Akiya homes exist across a huge spectrum of conditions, locations, and legal statuses. At one end, you have properties that are genuinely livable with cosmetic work. Clean structures with intact roofs and serviceable utilities located in accessible towns with reasonable services nearby. These do exist. They are being listed with increasing visibility on Japan's growing network of municipal Akiya banks and specialist foreign buyer platforms, and some of them are available for remarkably modest prices. Rural Akiya homes can often be found in the range of 2 million yen to 6 million yen, approximately $13,000 to $40,000 USD for the purchase price alone. Mid-range properties requiring renovation but with good bones and good locations run 10 million yen to 20 million yen, roughly $65,000 to $135,000 USD. Even fully modernized rural properties near established tourist or cultural hubs typically sit well below 200,000 US dollars, a price point that no longer exists for comparable property in most of the countries you are arriving from is coming from. At the other end of the spectrum are properties that are structurally compromised, legally encumbered by unclear inheritance situations, a consequence of Japan's inheritance registration system in which ownership can remain formally unresolved across multiple generations, or located in areas so remote that the cost of accessing basic services would fundamentally change the economics of the proposition. The candid picture is the right Akiya in the right location with the right legal due diligence represents one of the most genuinely extraordinary property opportunities available to foreign buyers anywhere in the current world. The wrong Akiya, chosen for its price point or its aesthetic without the structural inspection, the title search, the municipal grant eligibility verification, can become an expensive education in Japanese rural property law. Foreigners and Akiya. The legal reality? This deserves to be acknowledged clearly, because misinformation circulates widely on this topic. As of 2026, foreigners can legally purchase and own Akiya in Japan with no nationality-based restrictions. You do not need Japanese citizenship. You do not need permanent residency. You do not even need a Japanese visa to purchase property, though you will need residency status to access the grant programs and to live in the property long-term. The purchase process is legally identical for a foreign national and a Japanese national. What the process does require, and this is the caveat, is careful professional support. Rural Akiya transactions involve a judicial clerk known as a shihoshoshi for the title transfer, a building inspector for the structural assessment, and in many cases, an interpreter who can bridge not just the language gap, but the cultural expectations around neighbor introductions and community obligations that determine whether your arrival in a rural Japanese community begins well or badly. Here's an insider's tip for relocation success. Japan's municipal Akiya banks, online databases of available vacant properties maintained by local governments, have become significantly more accessible to foreign buyers in recent years, with several now offering English language interfaces and international inquiry processes. Begin your search there, rather than through private real estate brokers, because Akiya bank listings include properties whose owners specifically want them occupied and are often more flexible on price and terms than private market listings. The website, akiyajapan.com, and similar specialist platforms have emerged specifically to serve the English-speaking market and can save significant time and confusion in the early stages of your search. The geography. Which Japan? Japan is not one decision. It is a menu of profoundly different possibilities, compressed into an archipelago the size of California, but assembled with more geographic and climatic diversity than any map of its physical dimensions would suggest. Understanding which Japan you are considering is the most important choice you will make before any other decision, before the grant application, before the property search, before the visa pathway. Get this wrong, and no amount of financial support will compensate for the mismatch between the place and the person. Hokkaido, the wide-open north. Japan's northernmost island is the country's frontier. A landscape of sweeping fields, volcanic calderas, dense boreal forests, and a coastline that faces the Sea of Okhotsk with a rawness that feels nothing like the intimate folded geography of Honshu. Hokkaido has its own cultural identity, shaped partly by its Ainu heritage and partly by the fact that it was only formally settled by the Japanese government in the 19th century. Winters are serious, genuine subarctic winters with heavy snowfall and temperatures that drop well below freezing in the interior. Summers are cool, spectacularly green, and among the most pleasant in Japan. Hokkaido is for people who want space, physical, psychological, agricultural. The lots are larger here than anywhere else in Japan. The distances between communities are greater. The lifestyle is more self-sufficient and more physically active. The food is extraordinary. Dairy products, fresh seafood from the cold northern waters produced grown in volcanic soil. And the tourist infrastructure, while present in Sapporo and the ski resorts, thins quickly as you move into the interior. Tohoku, the ancient heart. The 6 prefectures of northern Honshu, known as the Tohoku region, carry a quality of cultural depth that rewards the traveler who slows down enough to find it. Castle towns, ancient shrines, traditional craft industries that have survived modernization by sheer stubbornness, and a landscape that moves through 4 full seasons with a kind of theatrical commitment. Cherry blossoms in April, burning oranges and yellows of maple trees in October, snow that transforms every familiar shape into something new. Tohoku was the region hit hardest by the 2011 earthquake and tsunami, and in some coastal communities, the recovery is still visible and ongoing. Inland, Tohoku has its own character entirely, older, more immersed in its own rhythms. The relocation incentive programs here are among the most generous in Japan, reflecting both the depth of the demographic need and the regional government's active commitment to attracting new residents. Shikoku, the forgotten island. Shikoku is Japan's smallest main island, and it's least visited by Japanese and foreigners alike. It is difficult to access, has no Shinkansen bullet train, and requires a car for almost all practical movement. It is also, for exactly these reasons, the least changed. The 88 temple pilgrimage route, the Henro, threads through the island in a loop that has been walked by pilgrims for over 1,000 years, and the communities that grew up to serve those pilgrims retain a quality of hospitality that is genuinely rare. Shikoku is for serious seekers, for people who have genuinely decided that connection to a specific landscape and a specific way of life is worth the trade-off of reduced urban infrastructure. For writers, artists, remote workers, and retirees who have finished the first act of their lives and want the second to be simpler, deeper, and more their own. Kyushu, the southern character. Japan's southernmost main island runs warmer, noisier, and more extroverted than the rest of the country. The food here is different, rich, spicy, more influenced by the historical trading relationships with Korea and China that shaped Nagasaki and Hakata across centuries. The people are described by the Japanese themselves as more openly warm than the northern islands, more willing to pull a stranger into conversation, more likely to invite a neighbor to dinner without 3 weeks of advanced scheduling. Kyushu has an active startup and tech scene in Fukuoka City, which keeps it connected to the modern economy in ways that benefit even rural areas within commuting range. The landscape ranges from volcanic highlands to subtropical coast, and the winters, by Japanese standards, are mild. Here's an insider's tip for relocation success. Before committing to a specific region, use Japan's trial migration programs referred to as Taiken Iju, which several municipalities offer to prospective residents. These structured short-term stays, typically ranging from 1 week to 3 months, allow you to live in a community, use local services, work from a provided workspace, and experience the seasonal rhythm and daily texture of life there before signing anything. Some municipalities provide subsidized accommodation for trial migrants. Ask specifically about this at the local government office, Shiakusho, of any municipality you are seriously considering. The visa pathway. The visa question for Japan is the one that stops most foreign nationals before they start. Japan does not have a simple long-term residency visa of the type that Portugal's D7 or Mexico's resident temporal represents. The Japanese immigration system is structured around purpose. Why you are in Japan determines what you can do and for how long. The practical pathways for the viewer of this video fall into a few categories. The digital nomad visa, the test drive. Launched in 2024, Japan's digital nomad visa allows remote workers to live in Japan for up to 6 months. To qualify, you must demonstrate an annual income of approximately 10 million yen, roughly 65,000 to 70,000 US dollars, and carry private health insurance with at least 10 million yen in coverage. The visa is available to nationals of countries that have visa exemption arrangements with Japan, which includes the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, EU member states, and Australia. Spouses and children can qualify under this program. This is your reconnaissance visa. 6 months in rural Japan, fully embedded in a specific community with the real experience of daily life, seasonal rhythm, and practical logistics, is the most valuable research you can conduct before committing to the longer-term path. The Business Manager Visa, the entrepreneur's route. For founders and business builders, Japan's Business Manager Visa allows you to establish and operate a business in Japan. As of October 2025, the capital requirement was raised to 30 million yen, approximately 200,000 US dollars, and now requires at least 1 full-time local employee. Japanese language proficiency at a demonstrable level is now mandatory for applicants or their key staff. For rural revitalization-aligned businesses, renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, community hospitality, cultural preservation, local government support in navigating this visa can substantially reduce friction. The long-term residency path. For those committed to making Japan their long-term home, Japan's permanent residency requires generally 10 years of legal residence, demonstrated stable income, good conduct, and tax compliance. Spouses of Japanese nationals can apply after 1 year. Highly skilled professionals, under Japan's points-based system, may qualify after 1 to 3 years. The path is not short, but it is clear and it is navigable. Daily life in rural Japan. It is 6 in the morning in the Japanese countryside, and the world is doing something that the world in most cities has largely forgotten how to do. It is being peaceful. Not silent, the birds are already active, a specific cascading sound from the forest edge that takes weeks to learn to identify, but that becomes, over time, the most reliable clock you have ever owned. A rooster somewhere down the slope confirms that the morning has officially started. The smell of wood smoke from a neighbor's kitchen arrives before the light does. You step out onto the Ingawa, the covered wooden veranda that traditional Japanese houses use as a transitional space between the interior and the garden. And the air is cold and clean in a way that is physically different from the air of any city you have ever lived in. Not just cleaner, different. The oxygen itself seems to carry more information. The cedar resin from the forest, the particular mineral quality of the mountain stream below, the distant sweetness of something blooming on the terrace slope across the valley. Your nearest neighbor, an 80-year-old woman named Yoshida-san, who has lived in this village for her entire life, appears on her own veranda at approximately the same moment she appears every morning. You exchange the morning greeting, "Ohayo gozaimasu," and she says something that your still developing Japanese allows you to understand approximately 70% of. You both laugh at the 30% you missed. This is a regular feature of your relationship with Yoshida-san. It does not appear to bother either of you. community, and relationships are the foundation of Japanese rural culture. Rural Japanese community life operates through a structure called the jichikai, the neighborhood association, that has no precise equivalent in Western civic culture. The jichikai manages the shared responsibilities of community life, the maintenance of local shrines and public spaces, the coordination of disaster preparation, the circulation of the kairanban, a community notice board that passes from house to house carrying announcements and local information. Joining the jichikai is not optional in any meaningful sense. It is simply what you do when you arrive. It is the first formal act of membership in the community you have chosen, and it carries with it a set of responsibilities that are modest in time and significant in meaning. Attending the seasonal cleaning of the local shrine, showing up to the community fire prevention drill, participating in the neighborhood beach or roadside cleanup in October. For the foreign resident, the jichikai is also the single most effective integration mechanism available. Consistent, reliable participation in community obligations does more to establish trust with your neighbors, to shift you from the foreigner who moved in to our neighbor from Canada, than any language ability or social charm you bring. Rural Japan opens slowly. It opens deeply, and it opens through action, not through introduction. Here's an insider's tip for relocation success. The single most valuable thing you can do before moving to rural Japan is learn Japanese, not to fluency, but to functional daily conversation. This transforms your experience from that of a visitor who is being accommodated to a neighbor who is participating. It changes how your community sees you, how you see yourself, and the depth of what becomes available to you in a country whose culture is extraordinarily rich and almost entirely inaccessible in translation. Start practicing the language before you arrive. Food. Japanese food culture is UNESCO recognized as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity. And in rural Japan, you are living inside the source material rather than a downstream version of it. Here's an insider's tip for relocation success. Washoku. Traditional Japanese cuisine is organized around the concept of seasonality in a way that no other major food culture fully replicates. Each season brings its specific foods: the first bamboo shoots of spring, the cold water fish of winter, the chestnuts and persimmons of autumn, the tomatoes and sweet corn of summer, all arriving with their own particular significance, their own particular preparation, their own particular ceremony of appreciation that treats the first taste of a seasonal ingredient as something genuinely worth relishing. In rural areas, this is not a restaurant concept or a food media aesthetic. It is how people actually eat. Your neighbor brings you a bag of yuzu from her garden in November because it is yuzu season and she has more than she needs, and sharing is what people do. The woman at the farm stand has been growing the same variety of rice on the same terraced fields that her family has worked for 4 generations, and she will tell you about it if you ask. Not to impress you, but because the rice has a story and the story matters. Rural Japan will rearrange your relationship with food by accumulated exposure to the version of eating that the rest of the developed world has mostly industrialized away. Safety. Japan's crime rate is, by the standards of almost any developed nation, extraordinarily low. The US OSAC Country Security Report for Japan states plainly, crime rates are generally well below the US national average, and crimes targeting foreigners are seldom. Violent crime is exceptionally rare. In rural areas, the level of day-to-day physical safety that most Western expats experience upon arrival is described consistently as one of the most immediate and visceral quality of life upgrades of the entire move. You will leave your door unlocked for the first time in years. This will feel strange. Then, it will feel like something you cannot remember not having. Here's an insider's tip for relocation success. The culture shock of rural Japan is real and worth preparing for. Your neighbors will notice everything: when you leave, when you return, what you carry. Privacy operates on a different assumption here, and community is the dominant value rather than the individual. The garbage sorting rules are strict and specific and enforced by social expectation, not by law, but by the diligent observance of everyone around you. None of this is hostile. All of it is navigable. The expats who thrive in rural Japan are almost uniformly the ones who approach these realities with curiosity rather than resistance, who treated learning the garbage schedule and joining the shrine cleaning crew not as obligations imposed on them, but as the first chapters of a story they were choosing to write. That orientation makes all the difference. Healthcare and practical infrastructure. Healthcare in Japan operates through a universal statutory insurance system that covers all legal residents, Japanese nationals and foreign nationals alike, who hold a qualifying visa lasting 3 months or longer. The system is called the National Health Insurance, Kokumin Kenko Hoken, and enrollment is mandatory within 2 weeks of establishing residency in a Japanese municipality. Premiums are income-based, and for a foreign resident with modest income in rural Japan, the monthly premium is typically low. The coverage is comprehensive: hospital care, specialist visits, surgery, prescription medications, mental health services, and maternity care. The cost-sharing structure requires patients to pay 30% of most medical costs, with the insurance covering the remaining 70%. Japan has an annual household out-of-pocket maximum based on age and income, meaning that even a significant medical event is capped at a defined amount, rather than exposing the patient to unlimited financial liability. For the American viewer who has spent decades navigating a system where a single hospitalization can generate a 6-figure bill, this structure will require a fundamental recalibration of how you think about healthcare risk. The caution, though, for rural healthcare: the density of specialist services is lower than in major cities, and English-language medical care is not guaranteed outside of urban centers. For routine care, dental and general medicine, rural Japanese clinics are available and functional. For specialist care or complex procedures, travel to a regional hospital center may be required. This is a real consideration for anyone with ongoing complex medical needs, and it belongs in your planning rather than being discovered after arrival. Cost of living. The cost of living picture in rural Japan delightfully surprising. Japan's national average monthly household expenditure for a single person runs approximately 163,303 yen, roughly $1,090 per month, including housing. That figure is the national average across all areas, urban and rural. Rural costs run lower. For a single person living in rural Japan, renting a simple but comfortable home or living in an Akiya they own, eating predominantly local and seasonal food, using a car for longer journeys, and cycling or walking locally, a comfortable monthly budget often falls in the range of $1,200 to $1,800, depending on location and lifestyle choices. Rent, which dominates cost of living calculations, is dramatically lower than urban Japan. A 2-bedroom house in many rural municipalities can be rented for 30,000 yen to 60,000 yen per month, approximately $200 to $400. A couple living in a similar rural setting, in an Akiya they own, eating well, maintaining a car, traveling domestically several times a year, and allocating for healthcare and a comfortable daily life, often finds that a monthly range of $2,000 to $3,000 provides genuine comfort and a quality of life that would cost 3 to 4 times as much in Tokyo, and more still in most North American or Australian cities. These are ranges, not guarantees. A lifestyle that leans toward imported goods, frequent city travel, and Western-style consumption will cost more. A lifestyle that leans into the local, the farm stand, the seasonal produce, the domestic travel, the public hot springs rather than the boutique hotel, will cost less and will often be the richer life. Here's an insider's tip for relocation success. Japan has 4 distinct seasons, and your energy costs will reflect them. Rural properties, particularly older Akiya, are often poorly insulated by modern standards because traditional Japanese architecture was designed around summer heat management rather than winter warmth retention. Budget for heating in winter, And if your renovation includes insulation upgrades, apply for the energy efficiency grants described earlier in this video before the work begins rather than after. The grant application must precede the renovation to be eligible, a logistical detail that catches people unaware and unfortunately cannot be retroactively corrected. Strategic relocation. Why is Japan so willing to pay you to move there? Well, let's explain. There is a Japanese concept called Sadoyama, the landscape zone between the mountain forest and the flat agricultural plain, the transitional territory where human habitation and wild nature have coexisted and shaped each other for thousands of years. It is not wilderness. It is not city. It is something that has no clean equivalent in the English language, a worked, tended, inhabited wildness that carries the particular beauty of a place where human hands have touched the land with patience and care over generations. Most of what you have seen in this video is exactly that. Sadoyama, the terraced rice fields that step up the valley slope, the cedar forests managed for timber and watershed protection since the Edo period, the vegetable gardens wrapped around the back of wooden houses, the streams that carry the mountain water down through the village and out to the lowland fields. This is the Japan that the relocation grants exist to preserve, not just as landscape, as a living relationship between people and place, a relationship that requires people to sustain it, which is, ultimately, the entire reason Japan is willing to pay you to come. The financial case has been made, 7 to 10 million yen in potential support, Akiya properties for a fraction of comparable costs anywhere in the developed world, a universal healthcare system, a cost of living that transforms the purchasing power of a modest income into something that actually buys a wonderful, full life. The grants are real. The properties are waiting. The country is welcoming. Japan is offering you entry into a way of maintaining daily life that the modern urban world has been gradually dismantling for a century. The seasonality, the community obligation, the relationship with food that runs from the soil to the plate within a short distance, the particular quality of a life lived at the scale of a village, where you know the people around you and where your daily actions have visible consequences in the community and you are seen, recognized, and appreciated. The question is whether you are ready to step into the adventure that is life in Japan. We will see you in the next episode.